everybody. Just getting my camera in the holder here. Make sure I'm muted. Let me adjust this light. Maybe we don't need it. Let's see. Oh, no, we do. Try to just adjust this so it's not quite so glary. Maybe I'll get a piece of paper to cover that. There we go. I think that's a little better. Hello, Linda. It's Rosie here, filling in for Carla. I'm just gonna adjust this here. There we go. Oh, I see if I can, I don't want to fool around with this. Turn off notifications. How is your summer going? Hi, Leanne. Make sure I don't lose power. Just plug this in. There we go. It's always a bit of a challenge to make sure I don't accidentally turn my screen off on my phone. All right. Is that okay? Can you guys see okay? Is the light all right? I can't decide if it wants to be, how cloudy it wants to be here today in Calgary. I hope everyone's having a great day. I'm just going to pull up Facebook on my computer here so I can see your comments. Whoops. Sorry about that. There we go. Hey, how are things in Red Deer, Leanne? We're having a beautiful summer, so I'm not going to complain here. All right, let me find Scrapshots on my computer. Well, I'm happy that I get to spend the Thursday live with you all. And let's see, my phone keeps falling down. Let me tighten that up. All right. Whoops, I forgot to take my telephone out. Hang on, I'm just gonna throw this outside my room. All right. Okay, sorry about that interruption there, guys. Hi, Irene from Nova Scotia. Hey, Tamara. And let me pull you guys up. There we go. Now I can see what's going on here. So, how's your Thursday going, everyone? Hi, Joe. In Oregon. Right on. So we are going to be playing with some Pinkfresh products today. I just picked these up last night from Sandy, and boy, they're kind of fun to play with. So we're going to do a couple of different things. And here is the card I kind of made last night, but we're going to make not this exact one, but kind of a version of that. Okay, so you'll be able to see how I made this one, but we're going to play around and do a little bit of no line stenciling. So that's the one thing. Let's say you love these flowers, but maybe you kind of want to take it one step at a time. You don't have to get all the bits and pieces. You can get some of them and still make them work for you. Okay, my phone is not cooperating. I'm just going to try to, there we go. Hi, Sheila. So this is what we're playing with today. And then I've actually got a little bonus for you as well. So this is the Pinkfresh Fancy Rose Bunch. So this is the stamp set. And you can see that's the full size stamp. So all of the stamps in one go. Let me just pull this out. And by that I mean, okay, when we stamp, it'll stamp this entire image. Okay, and then we use the stencils. Okay, this is a set of 6 stencils to color in that image. Okay, so you can color it by hand if you want, but this is much faster to use the stencils to color all that in. Okay, and then there's also the coordinating die. Okay, and that cuts out the entire image as well, all in one go. So including some of these inside pieces as well, which is always kind of a nice look when you've got some of those inner pieces cut, which are really tricky to fussy cut. So the die is perfect for that. And sorry, I'm just going to try to fix my phone here. I'm not sure why my There we go. Why my holder is not cooperating with me. Okay, so let's get started, and what we're going to do essentially is create 2 card fronts or 2 pieces at the same time with our stencil. Okay, but to start, I want to stamp this image. So I'm going to just get out my Misty, which is perfect for a larger stamp like this. That way I can stamp it multiple times if need be. Okay, so I'm just going to peel this off the backing here, and there we go. Just put that down on my cardstock, get my magnets in place here. All right, close the door and pick that up. And I'm just going to make sure that's right in the corner. So I'm going to use some Altenew Obsidian pigment ink. Now this is a slow drying ink, so I'm going to actually heat emboss it with clear embossing powder. Okay, so first I'm going to use my anti-static powder tool. And this is the Tailored Expressions. Whoops. Where does, oh, there we go. The Tailored Expressions anti-static powder tool. I don't think we have any of these in the shop, but if it's something that you like, and honestly, it is fantastic. Sandy can special order that in for you as well. We do have the Obsidian ink in the shop. And in fact, I just saw on Altenew's latest release that they now have a re-inker for this Obsidian ink. So I'm sure Sandy will be bringing that in because this is a fabulous ink. Get a nice crisp image right at the start. Okay, so we'll press that down. All right, and now I'm going to bring in my clear embossing powder and just quickly coat that and then heat set that. That way we don't have to wait for this to dry. I could just hit it with my heat tool as well to just dry the ink, but if I'm using it anyways to dry the ink, I might as well add a bit of clear embossing powder. Just keeps that outline nice and crisp when we start adding the ink with the stencil. Okay, and just heat set that. It's never a hardship to heat emboss. It's always fun watching that powder melt. Okay, so we'll just get that all set. Watch my fingers. All right. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to give that a minute, and I'm just going to bring in another piece of white cardstock, and I'm going to, this is the piece we're going to do the no line stenciling on. And I just noticed a little spot I missed on my heat embossing, so there we go. I'm always worried I'm going to burn my paper, so I end up not being quite as aggressive on the heating as I should be. All right, so now we can bring in the stencils. And so there are 6 stencils in this set. And they're all numbered. Okay, so they're quite easy. And I'm not sure if you can see here, but there's a little corner here. So if you cut your paper to an A2, you can line up those corners each time, which is what we're going to be doing so that we know that our images on our no line piece are lined up. Okay, otherwise we just use we'll just use the image here, our stamped image. Okay, so let's start with stencil number 1. I just need to make sure I start this the right way. So with this I can just line up my images whoops, line up my images here. Hang on. I'm getting this all backwards here. I know when I did this yesterday, when I was kind of practicing this, I actually worked my way in reverse. Is this stencil 1? Let me just double check that I have stencil 1. Yeah. Yeah, which was actually these blooms right here. Okay, so I'm going to line those up here. Okay, so once you get them lined up, kind of your reference point, I'm starting right here on this reference point, and then you just have to shift it. You'll just kind of get it lined up, and then you might have to shimmy it a little bit to the left or right or up and down till you get it right. You'll see it'll just line up kind of like a puzzle piece. All right, and again, if we get a little bit, if it's kind of off a little bit, not a big deal. Okay, so I'm going to grab my Spellbinder's Best Ever Craft Tape, and we've got some of this in the shop. And what I'm actually going to do, and I'll move this as I ink, because I don't want my stencil to shift. Normally I would tape it to the back, but because my image is not completely lined up here, as far as being able to use the corners on this, I'm just going to cover that little area there just for now, so that way it holds my stencil down. Okay, now I'm just going to flip that over and tape it to the back. So now when we go to ink, we are not going to have any issues with that stencil moving. Okay, so now I can take this little piece off the top here. Okay, and now I'm using the Distress Oxides. I just kind of thought it would be fun to give those a try with this. And let's see, I'll use this one. So I'm also using the Altenew Mini Blending Brushes. Love these brushes. I know that looks purpley. Trust me, it will not be purpley. No, maybe it will. Let me give that a quick clean. It wasn't as clean as I thought it was. All right. Just going to wipe that quickly on my baby wipe, and this is how I'm going to clean these brushes. And generally, if you use, I try to use the same ink family. So this is actually a set I've kind of put aside to work with pigment inks or Distress Oxides. Okay, that should be all right. If we get a little bit of color transfer, it's not a big deal. So on stencil number 1 now, I'm just going to come in with my antique linen. Let me put this on this side, then I'm not reaching across. And I'm just going to pick up a little and just quickly ink these areas with the antique linen. And my stencil here at the bottom shifted a little. There we go. So not to worry, just give that a little shift so it's lining up where I want it to, or where it should. And if it's a little bit off, it's not a big deal. Kind of just adds to the creativity of it, of your inking. All right. Perfect. So now I'm just going to set that aside, and then I'm going to apply my stencil right here, and I'm going to line up the corner of my cardstock to the corner of the stencil. Okay, and I'm just going to, again, add some tape to the back side of this. So I'm getting 2 done at the same time. Might as well while I have the oxide ink out. And since I want to give it just a little bit of time for that oxide ink to dry, then I can move on to a second panel at the same time. How's the weather where everyone is at? It's beautiful and sunny here in Calgary. A little bit cloudy here and there, but we've had a lovely summer so far. And looking at the forecast, it's going to remain very summer-like for us. All right, so again, this is stencil number 1. Hot, 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 Irene. Yeah. All right. So I'm just going to give that a quick wipe. I'll take this to some water later, maybe even a little bit of rubbing alcohol. I find that works really well to clean off the stencils. Okay, and there's our first layer. Okay. So now I'm going to grab stencil number 2. Let me just set that antique linen aside. Okay, and this is stencil number 2. And just go through the same process. Now I'm using this little piece here, these middle flowers as my reference points here. Okay, so that I can, that masks out the center of those blooms. All right. And now I've still got my tape on the back side of that, so I can just press down and that should hold my tape. Or pardon me, hold it in place over my cardstock. Okay, and now with some of these smaller pieces, I want to make sure I'm not too aggressively inking because I don't want to damage those little pieces in there. And I see I just have to shift that a wee bit. There we go. Okay. And so now I'm going to come in with some Kitsch Flamingo. And you can use any kind of inks you want with this. Pinkfresh has a number of great ink color families. I just thought I'd use these because I know we've got a lot of Distress Oxides in the shop. Okay, so now I'm going to come in. And if you're in a spot that has a very, fine little piece that you don't want to, you want to make sure you're not going to damage that piece of stencil, you can just come in and pounce lightly, and just ink it lightly. Okay. So we're going to ink all this in our Kitsch Flamingo. I'm actually really enjoying these coloring stencils. Hello, Stacy. Hi, Katie. Sunshine in Edinburgh. Fantastic. Yeah, I'm really enjoying these. I have not, this is my first time trying these Pinkfresh stencils. I've used the Altenew coloring stencils in the past with some of their products, and they really are fun for getting a lot of color on quickly as well, without the finickiness. Sometimes it's a little bit finicky with the layering stamps, getting everything lined up. Okay, so there's that second layer, but I'm quite impressed with these. All right, and now we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to line up these corners here on this stencil. Hi, Jenny. There we go. And now I'm going to come in and ink these guys. So using these stencils without the coordinating stamp is just going to give you a completely different look, almost like a no-line watercolor type of look. But it's just a fun way to kind of get a different look out of these. They are an investment, so you want to be able to use them in more than one way. Oh, have fun at the hardware store, Jenny. Hopefully, that's not because you have a leak or something happening. All right. So we'll just fill in all these areas with our Kitsch Flamingo. And the fun thing when you're layering these colors too, these ink colors over each other, you get some completely different combinations of colors. So, all right, just gonna give that a quick wipe. And that's just to make my cleanup a little bit easier. There we go. So look at that already. You can see just completely different color. And it looks like I got a little bit of moisture on here. I must have had some water on my glass mat. Not sure from what, but it'll dry. No big deal. Okay, so now we can move on to stencil number 3. And for this one, I'm going to bring in my saltwater taffy. And I'm just going to rub my brush off here on a dry cloth, get most of that pink off. Oh, you fix your fridge. Oh yeah, no, you do not want, yeah, you got to have a fridge that cools, not that heats. That is not very helpful. Okay, so now we're going to line up this layer. And so I'm just looking at the edges of these larger blooms and using that as my reference point. And then you can just kind of shimmy it around. There we go. Okay. And now we'll use saltwater taffy. For this layer. And it's just quick. So we'll get all that color on there. So yeah, like I was saying earlier, I really love these stencils that add color to your stamped images. Sometimes it's nice not to think about where the shadows are if you're going to color it yourself, or where to put highlights. The stencil kind of does all that work for you. All right, and now we'll line it up on here. So here's the thing, you can see how quick this actually goes. All right, there we go. So it's a fast process. Okay, I'll just press that down on top of the tape so I know it's not going to shift. All right, so we're working behind the scenes. The team is getting ready for our scrapaganza crop, our big crop in the fall, in September. So if you're in the Calgary, Southern Alberta area, hopefully you'll have a chance to. If you can't crop with us, you can pop in and do some shopping. There will be some classes as well. I'll be teaching a class, an Altenew card class, so we'd love to have you guys, as many of you who want to join us there. Yeah, so true, Stacy. Yep. Yeah, simple and elegant. And some of the fun things too with the different layers, you could always add glimmer paste or shimmer paste, or even play with your pastes. Use clear embossing ink and embossing glazes. There we go, I had a little piece stuck on there. That would be a really fun way to use these as well. All right, and now we're down to our last layer of our florals. So again, I'm going to, let me just pick that up there. Don't want it to stick on my tape yet. So I'm just lining this up. I'm starting with this as the reference point. I can see that little, where it kind of masks that little leaf area. And then there we go. Just kind of shimmy that around till it's where it needs to be. And with this one, I think it's tilted on an angle here, so I can see my little pieces down here need to line up. It's sticking to my tape. There we go. Just getting that. So it just needs a little shimmy and a shift, and then we've got it in the correct spot. All right. There we go. So now I'm going to come in with some abandoned coral. Well, this is our first year doing a larger crop like this, Irene, so who knows, maybe one year you can come out and visit us. If we have a successful event, we're certainly wanting to do it again, I think. All right, sorry, I just needed to shift that a smidgy. I feel like I might have shifted it off. There we go. Okay. And we'll ink all that. So I think in the future for this particular stamp, if I'm going to line it up, I would actually probably put the stencil down in my MISTI and then I would put the stamp on top so that I could also be matching up my corners. Just because of the way I stamped it, my corners aren't lined up. All right, so because this layer is easy peasy to line up, we just match up those corners, and as my husband says, Bob's your uncle. It's good to go. Yes, so true, Stacy. To me, September is the perfect time to start thinking about getting those Christmas cards underway and planning that out. All right, so there is stencil number 4. All right, now just look at that. Wow, I think you can actually see the just the depth and the detail in that stencil even better when you're not working around the stamp lines. Exactly, Katie. Yeah, that would be perfect. A little fine liner flower. All right, so now on to stencil number 5. And for this one, this is the first of our leaves and stems, so I'm going to use the Mowed Lawn. Just going to quickly give my red brush a wipe, even though I'm using ones dedicated to green. So these Altenew blending brushes come in a set of 4. So they're really fantastic to be able to kind of assign a color family to your brushes. Then just a little simple wipe in between different shades and you're good to go. Thanks, Irene. I think it's beautiful too. Okay, so this layer I've just got to do a little bit of a shimmy. And there we go. So there's lots of little detailed pieces here. I think we've got the majority of them. There we go. If it's a little off, it's not a big deal. You're not really going to notice once everything's all put together. Just makes for some interesting color combinations where you might have some overlapping colors where you didn't intend to. That happens to me quite often. And honestly, I've sort of had to tell myself over the years that it's okay if it's not like absolutely perfect, because 9.9 times out of 10, I'm the only one who's going to notice if it's not absolutely perfect. So unless it's like really obvious. So I've kind of had to tell myself, you don't have to redo everything so that it's perfect. Otherwise, I'd never get anything done if I stuck with that attitude on everything. That being said, I won't force myself to keep something if it didn't quite turn out the way I wanted. It's only paper, so even if I have to pitch it and do something different, I'll do that. All right. So there's that layer, and now let's bring in our no line. Okay. There we go. All right. Looks like it might be a wee bit off. Hang on. Get that lined up. All right. These are the stems and leaves, so, you know, if the stems kind of run into the flowers, that's okay. We don't mind that. They should be connected in some way to the blooms. All right. Okay, so, and these smaller brushes are fantastic for these smaller openings in your stencils. All right. And now I can foresee kind of creating you could create some beautiful Christmas cards with a stencil like this as well. Just change your ink colors. And I might even come in all over the top, use the largest openings, and you could put a sparkle paste over top. That would be stunning. All right. We are down to our last layer. So our layer number 6. So we'll do our stamped image first. And again, I'll use these larger blooms, the edges of those, to line this up. Okay, that looks good. Just press that down. And we're going to use our rustic wilderness. Okay. Does anybody own this set? The Fancy Rose bunch, or any of these Pinkfresh stamps and stencils with the coordinating dies? I assume if anyone owns them, you guys probably love them too. Like I said, this is my first time actually using these, and I really, really like them. And you know, it's amazing how different companies can just come up with they can all come up with a different way of using a similar sort of product. I just find that so neat. So at times you have to tell yourself you do not need all the things. You might want all the things, but probably don't need them all. All right. So there's our stamped image. I'm just going to put that aside while I do this no line piece. Give that a second to dry, and then we'll just go over the top and kind of wipe off anything that might be sticking to our embossing. Okay. So I'm going to line these up, kind of make sure my flowers are masked off underneath. There we go. And we can add this last layer. All right. Just ink that over top. All right. The nice thing when you're kind of inking these different layers, and they've, in each layer of the stencil kind of inks a different portion of your image, it just creates that shading that you might be thinking of trying to add when you're, either coloring with Copic markers or any other coloring medium. Oh, you have the sunflowers. Excellent. Oh, Irene, you have an Altenew set? Yeah, Altenew's got some great sets as well. I've got some of those as well. All right, just quickly wipe that off. Okay, and there is our no line piece. Okay, and now here is our, I'm just going to take the tape off the back here. Whoops. Just going to take a dry cloth and just kind of gently buff a little bit over these areas here. Just take any ink off of the heat embossing. kind of have it crisp up a little bit more. Linda, you know what? I'm honestly, I'm feeling the same way too about that, about the no line. Like, it's even, I kind of tested this out yesterday, and so I'll just show you the one I did yesterday. I used similar colors, but because I worked the stencils from the reverse, I ended up adding the darker color over top, so you couldn't really see all this detail. So here, because I started with the, because I just started with the different order, it's just much more sharp and crisp. Yeah. Oh yeah, fingerprints are, yeah, very true, Stacy. I have that habit as well, getting fingerprints everywhere. Okay, so now we can bring in, okay, so I'm gonna let you guys pick. Do you want to leave this, just the full panel like this, or die cut it out? Either way, I'm going to die cut this one. Okay, so I'll just, hang on a sec, I'll just get this all lined up here. But I don't know, I'm kind of leaning towards, yeah, I agree, Irene, I'm leaning towards just leaving that, the full panel like that. Might have to trim it down for the card front, but I'm going to cut this one just because I want to share with you a few in this sample that I made. Okay, I've popped that up and I just want to share with you a little trick to adding some dimension to this piece without having to cut teensy weensy pieces of foam tape. Yes, thanks, Tamara. Yeah, I agree. We're going to leave the no line. I'm just going to wiggling this around. All right. So I'm just going to take this back to my Big Shot just behind me here. 1 second. I'll run this through. All right. Cut. Okay, now just gently pull that off. All right, there we go. So this die is fantastic at just cutting that out all in one go. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to do a bit of a different background for this guy. Okay, we're going to leave this all one piece. I have to say, I almost don't even want to put a sentiment on here, but maybe we'll squeeze a sentiment in down at the bottom here because I think this is beautiful as is. I don't really want to add anything around here to take away from that beautifulness. So I think what we can do, the nice thing is that this stamp comes with these 3 sentiments and they're on the smaller side. So I think the scale works great so that we can keep the focus on the stenciling. Okay, so that might be a little bit more, let's do maybe Love You Friend. We can put that right in here. Okay, so let's do that. So this makes this super, super simple. And we'll just add a couple of finishing touches to this panel. Okay, so I'm going to put my Love You Friend right here. Okay, and I'm the queen of, oh, I'll just eyeball it, and then it ends up being crooked because the stamp sticks to my fingers. Okay. So now I'm going to use the Altenew Obsidian black ink again. This way I know that I'm going to get, it's going to be dark enough on the first go. And now I'm just gently pressing that down. I'm not giving it CPR. There we go. Because I don't want to, if you push too hard on these smaller sentiments, you'll kind of mush it all, and then it's just going to be a big mess. So I'm just going to set that aside. We're just going to let that dry by itself. I'm not going to add any embossing ink or anything like that. Let me move this aside. Pop this back on here so I don't lose it. Okay, and now we've got some really awesome Spellbinders. Let's see, what's this called? I think I misplaced the packaging of it. So there are these, I think they're like opalescent gems. Oh, wait, found it. Here we go. Color Essential Sequins. That's what they're called. Color Essential. These are pink opalescent. So I'm just going to put a few out here. Okay, and we're going to use these. Do a little bit of embellishment on here. Okay, on this card front. So I'm going to add these sequins here, and then once I know the ink is dry, the sequins are dry, I'll put this onto a card front, or a card base, pardon me. So I'll share that completely finished card with you guys after the live, once I know everything's dry. Okay, so we'll just, I can use my little Studio Katia tool here. Put a sequin there, one here. Let's see, is there smaller ones? I think one up here. I just kind of add them where I think I like them. Hello, Lorraine. Oh, no worries, Lorraine. We're just doing some stenciling here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I always like things to be in odd numbers, so we need a number 5 here. Let's put this guy, let's put him up here. So it just adds a little bit of shimmer and shine around your card. And we draw some attention to our lovely sentiment here. All right, and we'll glue that down. Thanks, Lorraine. So Lorraine, we've used this Pinkfresh Rose Bunch, Fancy Rose Bunch stencil that coordinates with this stamp set. You can use to color in this stamp, and we just use that to do like a no-line watercolor look. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside and just let that dry, and I'll put that on a card base after this live. But I want to show you, I've got another stencil here as well. Now this stencil is called, oh, let's see, what is this called? The Geo Arch. And now this stencil actually coordinates with a hot foil plate. Okay, but I don't have the hot foil plate. So I was kind of thinking, well, how could I kind of sort of get that look if I don't have that plate? So I did a little bit of experimenting last night, and then I'm just going to show you the last step of this background. So maybe I'll bring in the card front I made last night. Okay, so what I've done with this is I've actually applied Distress Oxide ink with the stencil, with the different layers of the stencil, over the Spellbinders brushed gold cardstock. Okay, so I've done each layer, and with each layer I just coated it with clear embossing powder and then heat set it. So now, once it's all finished, I've got the look of the hot foil, but I haven't actually done any foiling on this whatsoever. Okay, so let me just bring in the card base that I started this morning, or the front, I should say. So for this one, I know it turned out really well. So for this one, this darker color is actually a dye ink. So I kind of played around with this, and I did find that you'd have to use really, really dark colors of dye ink, and then you can heat set it with your heat tool. Okay, I'll show you, Linda. I'll walk you through it because we're going to do the last layer of this kind of live in person. Okay. All right. So I started with stencil number 1 of this Geo Arch. Okay. So for this layer, I used a dye ink on here. So and you can use dye inks, but you'd want to use dark colors, because if you use light colors, then here, I'll show you. So for example, I used dye ink here, but I used lighter colors, and you can see that a lot of the gold shows through. So it kind of took away from this hot foiled look. That's correct, Stacy. That's the Spellbinders brush gold cardstock. That's right. Okay, so for this one, I came in, I inked. Okay, and then I pulled that off, and I actually used my heat tool to dry it, and then also kind of set it aside to let it dry. All right, now for this next layer, just want to make sure I have the right stencil here. All right, so this is the last one we're going to do. So now for this layer, I came in here. Sorry guys, I'm not lining this up right. Too funny. Okay, I have to go this way. I have to go this way. This way it makes sense to me if I do it this way. So I'll show you what we're going to do on this layer. Okay. And now this was, okay, so this was this layer here. Okay, now this next one is this piece here. And I'm just going to kind of show you how I lined it up. I think I had it the other way. Okay, so for this layer, I treated the cardstock with the anti-static powder. Okay, then I inked this with Distress Oxide, and I'll show you the last layer so you can kind of get an idea of how it worked. Okay, then I took that off, coated it with clear embossing powder, and then heat set it. So let's do that with this final layer. Okay, so I'm just going to, and again, you can just line up the edges there. And I'm just going to flip that over because I don't want it to move, and just put some tape on the back. So it won't be as exact as if you were actually using the hot foil plate, but because when you use the hot foil plate, you're doing that gold foiling, and then you're just filling in the areas with your stencil, the unfoiled areas. Okay, so we got that down. Okay, so let's come in now with some Kitsch Flamingo. This will all make sense here shortly. Let me find my ink tool. Make sure it's somewhat dry. Okay. So now I'm going to come in with this, and I just don't want to push really hard because I don't want to get kind of clumps in my, it'll clump up a little bit. Oh, and there's one thing I forgot to do, but I can do that really quick. We'll just do it over top. Let me just lift this up. I do want to just treat the rest of it here. Treat that with the ink blending tool. Or anti-static, pardon me. This cardstock is actually not too bad. It doesn't, the anti-static doesn't, the powder won't stick all over the place. I find this cardstock is pretty nice. It kind of just falls right off of it when you add the embossing powder. So, and because this is the last layer, I guess we don't really need to worry if we get embossing powder somewhere we don't want it. It's clear, so it's just going to melt and you won't see it. All right, so I'm just going to go through and ink through here all the way around. Now I could use a larger ink blending tool and probably cover a little more square footage, but I don't mind doing it like this so that I get kind of a nice, I want to make sure I don't get kind of a goopy thick layer, but that I get some nice coverage within each opening. Yes, Linda, this is Distress Oxide ink. Like I said, I did try this with dye ink, but kind of going from a light, medium to dark. The shades I used weren't dark enough, but the oxide, I think because it kind of just sits right on top, you can use these lighter shades, and it's much easier to see them than if it was a dye ink. I don't want to have the gold cardstock show through so much on this, because we're kind of giving the illusion that we used a hot foil plate, or that we've got some sparkle and foiling on this card front. So I'll just work my way through here. And I'll put that here so you can see that it's oxide. Okay, just about there, guys. I'll get that around. Now, if you want it to be a little bit darker, I can go back all around, add another layer, but I'm just going to stick with that here. In the interest of time, I'm going to pull that off. Okay, and now you can see where we've got that extra ink there. So, I'm going to bring in my clear embossing powder. It'll be much easier to see once we get this next layer of embossing powder on. Okay, I'm going to bring that in and just drop it on over. Thanks, Linda. Tap that off a bit. So it's a little time consuming, but I mean, if you like the stencil and you're wondering, well, I also like that hot foil look, but I don't have a hot foil, this is one way you can kind of create that look yourself. All right. So I'm just going to put that aside. Yeah, Linda, that's, I think I bought, I don't know how many jars of clear embossing powder I bought so that I could fill that up, because honestly, it is so much easier than trying to work with a little small jar when you're trying to cover a larger area. Okay, so I'm just going to turn my heat tool on here, just give it a second to warm up. And I'll just use the edge of my picker here. And now I can bring that to the paper. Okay, you can see that start to melt. So this color I used, I think I might have used the same color in the same spots. But that's all right. Turn this way. All right. Make sure we've got everything covered. All right. Okay. So there we go. I think I need to melt that a wee bit more. That's right, Linda. No, this Distress Oxide, it's a slow drying ink. So you can actually use embossing powder over top of it. Or you can just dry each layer with your heat tool. You don't have to put embossing ink over top, but if I'm gonna, embossing powder, but if I'm gonna be drying it with my heat tool anyways, I kind of like the extra shine. So now you can see we've got that, we can see our gold in the background. So it kind of gives the impression that we've used foiling. Okay, and so the darker the ink colors you can use, like you can see it a little bit more here with the blues, then the more you'll see the gold behind that. Okay, so I'm probably not going to cover this all up. I could add this on here. Okay, I'm not sure if I will. You guys tell me, but if not, I'll come up with another card to use this on after the live. But I just want to show you a quick little trick now. We'll pretend that I'm actually going to put that on that card front. Yeah, I love that, Irene. Nope. So I'm going to do something else creative with this so you can see how that turns out. So again, this is that Geo Arch stencil set from Pinkfresh, and that's a 3-piece set. Okay. Thanks, Lorraine. Yeah, just a sentiment, you know. Speaking of, here's what we'll do with that one. So Pinkfresh also has these die cut sentiments, and these things are gorgeous because they come foiled already. So this is a gold foil. So let's see how many are in here. There are, if I can find the number of sentiments, 39 sentiments in here. Okay, so perfect set for this. We can just pick out a sentiment, add it to that card front, maybe even a few gems, and that's done. So I think after this live, I'll do that. I'll pick one out, unless you guys want to pick something. Let's see. I almost think smaller is better. Could do a little hooray. And the nice thing with this, because these are white, let's say I want to coordinate this a little bit more with my background, I could come in with a lighter color of ink, and I could ink all over this, and then just wipe off wipe it off so that there's no ink stuck onto the gold. So that I'm just done. You can do that. But so, okay, before I forget then, I just want to show you guys one way to, let's see, I just want to show you how I finish this particular, my sample off, okay? If that's okay, if you guys have a little bit of time for that. We're almost done. All right, so what I've done is I've come in and I have embossed white cardstock, okay, with a 3D embossing folder, and I use the Altenew Enchanting Vines 3D folder to emboss this white cardstock. Okay, then I've glued this cardstock onto my card front. All right, I've also heat embossed the sentiment with rose gold embossing powder. Okay, but I want to show you really quick just how I added the die cut. Okay, so you can see it's got a little bit of dimension, but I wanted to show you an easy way. You guys might be familiar with this, but I'll go over it anyways if you're not. So the easiest way to add a die cut like this onto your card front, if you want a little bit of dimension, is just die cut a few extra layers of white cardstock, okay, with the die, and then we're going to glue these layers together. Okay, so this saves you so much time as opposed to cutting out little pieces around the edge of foam tape. You could try cutting a piece of craft foam as well. What I've found in the past when I've tried cutting like craft foam to add it, like out of a die cut like this, maybe it's because I'm kind of impatient, but I found that it doesn't really, it's like the foam gets kind of pushed out of shape and stretched, and then it doesn't really fit behind my die cut. Diane, that's a good question. I don't know how it would change the weight for postage because I haven't actually tried to mail something like this with extra dimension. I myself might kind of tend to kind of save that as a card to give away to someone, like to hand deliver. But I guess the only way is to try. I mean, to my knowledge, as long as it kind of fits through the postal slot, like the mailing slot, it should be okay. Like that shouldn't really add any extra postage to your card, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's true, Katie. It does. You know, then when it runs through the sorting machine or however that works, then you've got all the pieces are solid. Okay, so then I can just add my colored piece to that. Oh, and look, I forgot to poke a few areas out. Let me make sure I have them all. Yep. All right. So we can just add a little bit of glue. All right. And now you could also, sorry, I'm thinking out loud about the question about the added bulk. I'm only thinking about this now, so I didn't have a chance to grab an embossing folder, but I mean, this is a 3D embossing folder, so you could also kind of reduce the bulk by just using a regular embossing folder. That's going to give you texture, but not any additional bulk. So you'll still get the interest of texture behind your die cut, but you're not going to have a whole lot of bulk. Oh, the weight of the card. Yeah, I think it's okay, Diane. Like, it's kind of hard to describe. I mean, sure, it's heavier than something like this, but it's not huge. Yeah, I think it would be okay. You know what? If I remember, I'll go visit my friend at the post office and have her weigh it up for me and see if it would make any difference. All right, so then we can just attach that to your card front and you're done. A little simple sentiment, or we could even use, I hate to cover up much of anything on these are so pretty, but one of these sentiments that are just simple right across the front, and we're done. Tops the 27 grams. Okay, I'm going to write that down, Diane, because now I'm curious. I might weigh this. In fact, I'm going to weigh this after because I do have a food scale. So we should be able to get a halfway accurate weight. So 27 grams. Well, I can't find my pen, so I'll just have to remember that. Oh, there it is. 27 grams. Okay, I'm going to weigh this after, and I will post that on here. Okay, so there you go. Within an hour and a bit, if you're going to do this step, it would probably take you, if you add this extra piece to the back here, you could get this, you know, an hour or so, you could get all these done. But I will just finish these up, putting it on a card base, and then I'll post these in the group and on Instagram. And if you guys have, if you've got some stencils, you want to try that no-line stenciling look, then I would love to see what you make. Post it in the paper crafting group. Okay. Good to know, Diane. I will check that out. Thanks very much. Yeah, I'll post the completely completed projects here and on Instagram and in the paper crafting group. And I'm going to be back with you guys next Thursday as well. I'm so looking forward to that. Hopefully Carla's enjoying her vacation, her well-earned vacation, and having a great time. And thanks for spending some of your afternoon with me. So have a great day, everyone. Take care. Bye.